Hey, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It normally runs for about 3 hours, but last week I was sick, and this week I am still sick. So I apologize, but I think we're going to be going shorter tonight. Just because I don't know if my voice is going to hold. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So Matthew, Donna, Anne, hello, welcome, welcome. How is everybody doing? Oh, thank you, Donna. Todd, hello. Tracy, bounce back, says hi from North Carolina. We have Anne from Vegas, who's here. Serena, Matthew, Elizabeth. Matthew says his ex is playing games with the kids, with his two daughters. What kind of games is she playing? Joe from the UK is here. Beauregard says howdy. And speculator, Kamami, bonsoir. Jack is here reporting from the Tri-City area, southeastern Washington. Andrea says she's from Texas and has watched many of these videos, but this is her first live stream. Well, welcome. Matthew says that he is in contempt of visitation. Oh, she's holding the kids for no reason. Have you contacted an attorney yet? Is this the first time this has gone on as far as kind of withholding the children? Denise says, good evening. It's her birthday. Happy birthday, Denise. Oh, she is in contempt. Okay, Matthew says that he filed. Gotcha. Jack was saying, Dana, I hope you're somewhat over your cold. Your voice still sounds a bit ragged. Yes, I am not over my cold. Hopefully I'm at the tail end of it. But yes, it's I have bronchitis and just the coughing is getting so old. I am so over it. Well, thank you, Andrea. She says, I loved your book too. You radically shifted my thinking when I was going through a messy divorce last summer from my narcissist. Good deal. I tell you, it's amazing. I think what validation just from somebody else the clarity that can provide. I really feel that so many people they already have all of the answers that they're seeking inside of them. They just need that validation, because a relationship with a narcissist, it's so confusing, and they can really do a great job at making us feel less than, that we're not enough, or that these issues aren't real major issues. And it can just be such a confusing time, and it's due to all of the manipulation. So it's amazing how far off track we can get. And it's also, I think, amazing how quickly back on track we can get when we do have that validation of, yeah, this is a problem. Like, makes complete sense that you would feel the way you feel about what's going on. Oh, well, thank you, Melissa. She says, hey, I'm currently listening to your book on Audible, the Out of the Fog book. Thank you so much. It's like hearing my life through you. Oh, that makes me so glad, Melissa, that you're able to get just that validation. It's such a big piece of the puzzle for so many people. And also, just to let you guys know, I did finish, thankfully, finished my third book, which is The Narcissist's Playbook. I finished the audiobook recording of that, what was it, like a week and a half ago. And it is now pending review on ACX, which is the Audible company, basically. So hopefully that'll be live here by the end of the month, but we'll see. So that's exciting. I'm glad the book was, I'm glad I finished recording everything before I got bronchitis. Yes, Andrea says, yes, so many light bulbs went off seeing your words on paper. It echoed everything I had been feeling and holding in for 10 years. I am so glad. I know for me, when I was going through everything, coming across people, it was the same, coming across different voices on the internet, on YouTube and just on blogs and kind of Facebook. And it was just like light bulb after light bulb after light bulb. Like, oh my gosh, yes. Okay, thank you. This is, this isn't just a couples issue. This isn't something that, this is a big deal and this is a problem. And I'm not making a big deal out of nothing. Like, this is outrageous behavior. Elizabeth says, I'm still amazed that I encountered that twisted of a person. Yes. I know. I think we can all agree with that sentiment. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that people that are that pathological walk the earth, and it's even more mind-boggling that how they can walk the planet, and we can get caught up with one, and it can take us so long to realize it. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Hi, Rob. Matthew, hold on a second. I need to cough. Where's my mute? Hold on. Okay. So Matthew says, how can I show the judge what she is? Documenting as much as you possibly can. The more you can get rid of any doubt of like he said, she said kind of a thing, and just say, okay, this is what I did. This is the communication that I had with her. This was the response. Paper trail is going to be your best friend in this. So, yeah, that's what I would do. And just try to really abide by the court orders as much as you possibly can. And then showing paperwork or some sort of documentation, paper trail, if there was any type of agreement, even if she's like, hey, it's totally no big deal, let's just swap weekends, these kinds of things. You just want to get everything in writing. So do everything through email or through text message. You want to save screenshots, this kind of thing. Let's see here. Elizabeth says, hi, Dana. I've never chimed in before, but I just wanted to say thank you for having this forum for all of us to share. I'm still confused as to whether or not my ex is a narcissist. So, I think you're not alone in that. I think a lot of people really struggle with that. And for our purposes, I think really in general, that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. It's going to be really difficult for most people to get that validation, to actually get like an official diagnosis. Yes, this person was in fact narcissistic personality disorder. Instead, we can back up a little bit and just figure out, okay, is this person, looking more at behavior traits, I guess, do they have empathy? Because if empathy is missing, it's next to impossible to have a relationship with somebody, because true intimacy requires empathy. So, how is their empathy? How is their communication with you? How do you feel when you're around this person? When you leave, do you feel insecure, less than, drained? That this relationship is just sucking the life out of you, or it's a very one-sided dynamic? Do they just have this jaw-dropping level of selfishness and selfish disregard? Just this level of nonchalance, like they just don't care. These kinds of things, all of that, any one of those things is a deal breaker. If a person's not willing or able to work as a team, if there's not that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, if there's not empathy, they're taking you into account, they care about your feelings, they're mindful of your feelings, they want to hear your feelings, like there's that sense of mutuality, there's that respect for another person as an individual. These kinds of things, if that's not there, then it's just time to drive on. Because, you're pushing a boulder up a hill and you're not going to get very far in a dynamic with a person like that. So sometimes it helps to just kind of back up and be like, okay, regardless of the label we assign, whether they're a narcissist, a sociopath, a psychopath, what have you, is this the kind of person that you can be in a healthy, nourishing, mutually fulfilling relationship with? And if the answer is no, then there you go. So I think it's important for people to realize that, not everybody has the same morals and motivations as you. And that's, I think, probably the number one mistake that so many of us make is we tend to think, oh, well, if this person gets married to me, then we must have the same idea of marriage. And with a lot of people, really, that's not the case. Some people get married just because they like the stability, but they're completely content on cheating on their partner or, just doing all kinds of things. So it's about realizing, okay, my view of this other person, am I seeing them clearly, or am I holding on to some sort of false hope that there's somebody else? Like, is their behavior here and my expectations for their behavior is here? Because if that's the case, then that's a setup, that divide between the two. That's where that frustration and heartbreak continually comes into play, because our expectations are not in alignment with reality. Their behavior's here, it's deplorable. Our expectations are happily ever after. Deplorable and happily ever after don't meet, So they're two opposite sides of the spectrum. So getting really clear and seeing this person clearly and realizing that we can't force another person to change or to be anything other than they are. It doesn't work that way. All it does is just set us up for disappointment time and time and time again. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to mute you guys again real quick. Hold on. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and Serena was saying it took her 28 years in finding my videos to figure out that she's not crazy. She says, now I just look at my narcissistic husband and I laugh to myself knowing that I have figured him out in so many ways. Yes, and when you see their behavior for what it is, that's kind of where this sense of, I would almost say like liberation comes into play, because you just kind of realize with this, I think a mix of sadness and clarity of, oh my gosh, yeah, this is what it is. And for any number of reasons, they're that way, but they just are that way. It's like the saying goes, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And that's really the case, but it takes it takes normal, decent people a really long time to fully comprehend that other people in the world are not like them, and that some people just have profound dysfunction, and for a wide variety of reasons, they are uninterested or incapable of effectively bonding to another person and just being on the level with communication. Yeah, Gareth, you're so right. He says, it starts within. Love yourself and the rest will follow. Yep. It really does. It's a game changer when we start to see our value and understanding what that really means. And, we live in a society that it really doesn't teach what it means to own your value for men or for women. And so we just get all tangled up. By the time we hit 21, we are so tangled up about what it really means to value ourselves. And instead we do all kinds of, kind of dysfunctional, maladaptive ways of trying to find value. We find value outside of ourselves. We find value maybe in our physical appearance, especially when we're younger, but we might find value in the person that we're dating, or we might find value in stuff. I think that's becoming a lot more common, with brand names and trying to impress other people, because it just makes us, it's a way to kind of build this false self-esteem is what it is. But none of that is truly valuing ourselves. That's just extra stuff. It's not, it doesn't fill up the core. It doesn't come from within. So really treating yourself with value, realizing that you have worth, understanding that, because you have worth, that you don't need to stick around and be mistreated in any situation, and that it's okay to have boundaries, and that you don't need to give people multiple chances to continue to hurt you just because they're family, or just because you've been friends with them since kindergarten, or just because they're married to you, or that you're dating them. So, let's see here. That's insightful, truth seeker. Wow. She says, sorry, I was going to mute you, but I didn't make it in time. I'm going to keep my mouse over the mute button so I'm not coughing into the microphone here. Truth seeker says, I used to think that high pain tolerance was a good character trait, that patience is a virtue. You and so many other people, I tell you, this could be a whole nother book of all of these kind of idioms or sayings that we're told that get so misconstrued. And then we take this dysfunction and we somehow flip it and becomes an ideal. Oh, it's so noble. It's a noble thing to be long suffering, right? Or I had somebody, I think I was telling you guys about this last week, somebody the other day who had mentioned that she was really in love with her partner. And hold on a second. Okay. Really in love with their partner. And had said, well, even if he were to shoot me up with heroin, shoot me up with heroin, beat me up, and throw me out of a moving car, I would still love him. And the way that she was saying that was, it was sort of from this place of, see how loyal I am, see how much I love this person, see how committed I am, is basically what she was saying. And I was horrified, because that's not love. Like, none of that is love. That's profound dysfunction to stick around and to be mistreated like that. And it's so important that we get to the core of that and get clear on what is a healthy love and what is a trauma bond and what is this, this kind of sense of like unhinged neediness that can come from old abandonment wounds. Because that kind of talk of I'll stay around no matter how terrible a person treats me, that kind of stuff tends to either come from trauma bonds in the relationship or unaddressed, unhealed abandonment wounds, or both, that were existing, abandonment stuff that had been existing from childhood, and then additional trauma bonds from that relationship later on. But, it's amazing, all of this stuff. The book, The Giving Tree, which I had and then I lost it in the fire, but I want to buy it again, is another great example of that. Personally, I don't think that Shel Silverstein wrote that book to show that literally sacrificing yourself for somebody else is a virtue. I think he wrote it as a piece for people to reflect upon and discuss. But it's heartbreaking to me how many people, and I read it that way too when I was younger, of this is what love is. And if you're familiar with the story, it's this tree who gives and gives and gives to this little boy. And, she, whatever you need, little boy, you can take from me. You need my apples, I'll give you my apples. You need my branches, I'll give you my branches. You want to cut me down and make a house for yourself? You can do that too. And then at the end of the book, she's nothing but a tree stump. And, basically then she's just a chair for the little boy. That's it. You're basically, her face became a chair, right? Like, sticks his butt on her face. That's it. That's what she's good for. And that's not love. So yeah, Zachary, yep, you're spot on. He says, there's nothing virtuous at all about being a doormat. There's just nothing at all. Yeah, I agree completely. Thank you, Jenny. She says, Dana, your dedication to helping people see the light has been so therapeutic for me. Thank you for your enlightenment to things I was too naive to see for 30 years. Well, I'm just humbled and honored that I've been able to be a part of your journey to clarity with all of this. It's, it's just absolutely so rewarding and such a cool thing, to be able to kind of share lessons learned the hard way, and that hopefully that's some other people, it can spare them some pain. Let's see here. Okay, I'm going to try your name again. Xiao Yu. Did I pronounce that correctly? Xiao Yu had a question. It says, how do I cope with paranoia, with having to worry about what the narcissist may do or say behind your back? I'm just constantly thinking about it. Hold on a second. Well, I think there's a couple things. I think realizing what we have control over and what we don't have control over. And when you realize that we don't have control over what another person's going to say or do, so that can make us feel kind of anxious. But in a way, all of that worry that we're feeling about, oh, no, what if they do this and what if they do that? And that worry, it can feel productive, but it's not, because we have no control over it. So something that can help is to kind of shift your approach from just worrying about something you can't control to thinking about, okay, well, what could you do if he were to do worst case in XYZ, whatever it might be, release nude photos of you, forward text messages to your parents, call your job. How would you handle that? And to kind of think through the plan. And once you can kind of think through and anticipate and just kind of get a plan for how you would handle it if that were to happen, then a lot of that fear dissipates because we've put a face on the monster. So now you have an idea of, okay, you know what? It's not the end of the world. Certain things might be incredibly embarrassing. It might, there's going to be emotional discomfort there, but you can and you will get through it. And so how can you handle whatever worst case scenario he might say or do? Yeah, and Xiao Yu says, well, that's a good way to look at it, but I'm very OCD, so it bothers me a lot. And it can be really difficult to let go. I will tell you, all of these lessons and these dynamics with these kinds of people are lessons that we are almost forced to learn the hard way. Nobody wants to learn these lessons in general, let alone when there's so much at risk like this. It's incredibly painful, but I hope that you can see, like, within that pain of all of this, there really is the opportunity for tremendous amounts of growth. So one of the things that you can do in all of this is to, because you're having such a hard time letting go of this control, realize, you know what? Here you are. You, of course, nobody wants to be here, but this is also an opportunity for you to focus on redirecting your thinking to what you have control over and what you don't, and then focus on letting go. So I think sometimes we just have to try to squeeze out the best, as many lessons, make this situation work for you as much as you possibly can. So, because we don't have control over a lot of things, but we also do have control over certain things. And so if we can embrace that, it can just be a real game changer. Thank you, Jenny, for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. She says, you are appreciated. Well, thank you. That just made my day. I appreciate that. Let's see. Trina asks, how can I deal with my partner lying to me when I have to stay for my kids? It's really draining me. I guess first and foremost, how old are the children? So I guess how much longer would you be staying? And is your partner's lying, is there anything else kind of going on? Well, I guess, okay, ages 12 through 7. Okay. So basically you're looking at being in this relationship for at least the next 11 years. I think first and foremost, it goes back to, it's going to be adjusting your expectation of his behavior to the reality of his behavior. If he has a longstanding pattern, okay, he's lying and cheating, then I would adjust, and he has, I'm assuming, no interest in stopping that. So if you're going to stay, then you're going to have to adjust your expectations to the reality that you are married to a man who lies and cheats, and to not expect anything different. If he's not motivated to change it, if there's no empathy, if there's no accountability, if there's no sincere remorse, any of that, then you're married to a man who's lying and cheating. So I would start adjusting your behavior accordingly. I would talk to an attorney about seeing, can you go through a financial separation? Kind of what can you do to prepare yourself? If you do have sex with them, I would use protection. I wouldn't ask him. I would just tell him that you're wanting to use protection, or he does not get to touch you. It's because what's going to break your heart time and time and time again and make the next 11 years of your life really long and miserable is to keep expecting him to be an open, honest, decent, faithful, loyal husband, and he's not. So, and then with that said, so once you have adjusted, you're clear. This is the reality, and this is the reality that you're feeling that you have to stay in for whatever reason. Then being like, okay, that being said, how do I now go forward and carve out as much peace and joy and happiness and contentment in my life as possible? What does that look like? How can you go about doing that? It's generally going to be investing a lot of time in the healthy friendships that you have in your life, hobbies, trying to nourish yourself as much as possible in all of the other, in every single way that you possibly can. So, yeah, and that's a difficult situation, that you're in, and and I understand not everybody can or is able to or wants to leave. And, you know, it's going to be, you're going to have to find that line of how can you still get some of your needs met in this dynamic. So let's see here. Oh gosh, it's Ricky asks, was the talented Mr. Ripley a narcissist? I vaguely remember that character. Like I said, I vaguely remember it. Didn't he kind of take on the identities of other people? He was definitely on that side of the spectrum. I would say narcissist slash kind of psychopathic, if I remember correctly, because he would take on the different identities of people. And was it about validation for him? I don't really remember. Just kind of feeling, wasn't he kind of feeling less than? And so that's why he was starting to kind of live out this fantasy life. Let's see here. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. Zachary was saying, you cannot hold the horrible things they say and do close to your heart. It will just crush you. It's not about you. It's about them. Yes. And again, I think normal, decent people, it's so profoundly difficult to fully understand, you know, being in a relationship with a narcissist, it's like staring into a black void. There's no validation, there's no empathy, there's no sincere connection, there's no consideration or sincere consideration for your feelings, for much of anything. It's truly just all about them all of the time. And they feel entitled to act that way. And they just, you know, I feel entitled. They expect it. And it's just part of it. And they expect you to not have a problem with things being all about them all of the time. And it's a black hole. I mean, you can't give, you know, the solution for a person like that. It's not to continually pour love and understanding into them, because there's a hole in their bucket and it just goes straight out. It's never enough. Like, another person cannot fill up another person like that. It doesn't work. Like, that kind of self-worth and validation has to come within if it's ever going to be lasting. But for them, it's not. It's just this, you give and you give and you give, and they take and they take and they take. Yeah. Little Miss Charmaker was saying, what you said about putting a face on the monster is honestly so accurate. I have to wait 2 years until I can leave my abusive household. And, you know, when we're able to do that, when we're able to effectively get clear on what it is that we fear, that's when we start taking our power back. It's such a game changer, but I will tell you, it can be so difficult to truly sit with that and to really kind of think it through. Okay, what is the fear? Maybe it's the fear that I'm going to lose my job, or that they're going to send, you know, sexy photos of me to my parents or on the internet, or they're going to do something like this. That when the stakes are so high, it can feel, the anxiety is proportional to the level of the, you know, the stakes that they're playing at. And it can really just feel absolutely debilitating. But if you can allow yourself to just realize, you know what, you can and you will get through this. And it's their behavior. It's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. And hopefully that you'll have some other people around you that can also see that. Like, that's a really hateful, horrible thing to do, to try to destroy somebody else in any number of ways like that. And, but yeah, getting a plan for it, it really helps to just get rid of a lot of that fear. Yep, that's a great way to put it. That's a cute name. Mischievous says, I understand, she's talking to the other gal in here. I understand that you are in a pressure cooker. That's a great way to describe that. Find some people you know that you can trust. Mm-hmm. Yep. I had to call both of my parents and say, basically, this person is not who you thought they were. There's a really solid chance he's going to be contacting you. I don't know what he's going to say, but please don't answer the phone. And if he leaves voicemails, just delete them. It was very, very stressful. And he actually ended up calling my mom. She answered, they talked, and he didn't say, anything that I thought he was going to say, but it was a total power play. Like, he just wanted to have the last word. And just whatever, it's ridiculous when you just realize, like, this is just stupid games. So, Super Silver J asks, how do you work on your confidence? I feel like a meek little mouse and I can't stand up for my needs. I think a lot of times that confidence comes from reconnecting with your self-worth. So realizing, that your wants and your needs are just as valuable as anybody else's. Like, you're here, you're here on this planet. You matter. You matter. You matter. And I think it has to stem from this like deep sense of knowing. So for example, there was a time in my life, especially when I was in my late teens, early 20s, where I did not see my value at all. But the irony in that is I thought I did. But I didn't. So hold on a second, let me cough again. And I confused, I would say sex especially, with empowerment. It was this weird feeling of, you know what, I am so confident. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to sleep with whoever I want. And, kind of just girl power. That was my thinking. I'm a strong, empowered woman. I own my body. I own my sexuality. I can do whatever I want. And that was the mindset of a lot of the female friends I hung out with. And I didn't realize until I was in my late 30s how much of a problem that mindset was when I was younger. Because, then you get tangled up with a bunch of people that don't care about you. Then you're just a one-night stand. They don't value you. They don't even know you. And vice versa. It was just a lot of emptiness. And I don't know. So nowadays, realizing, okay, truly knowing your value, of knowing your worth, knowing your strengths. This is what you bring to the table. This is what you have to offer the world. And realizing that for another person to treat you with dignity and respect, that's just the basics of adult human behavior. That's expected. That's just expected. That's not something that you need to earn, you have to fight for, any of that. That's just appropriate. That's manners, is what that is. That's just manners. So kind of understanding that this isn't something that you have to fight for, that you have to try to earn. And that when we do truly respect ourselves, we interact with other people. Our expectations, our standards are a lot higher. They're healthy, I should say. They're not just high, because that makes it sound like, we're difficult. They're healthy. So you're a lot more choosy about who you let into your life, who you're having sex with, who you're dating, who you're friends with. This is, one of my favorite questions that people on here ask all the time is, can I be friends with my narcissist? Can I be friends with my ex, my abusive ex? And right there, that shows that person, that there's some internal value that needs to be examined. Because when we truly value ourselves, we value who is in our life. And people that mistreat us, we don't tolerate that. We're not friends with that. We don't have sex with that. We don't spend time with that. Like that is not something that we have in our life, because it's not nourishing. There's no, we've got to be able to hold our own standards of, this is how I expect to be treated. And if you're not going to do that, then, you got to get to walking. So I guess what I'm saying is, it starts with truly acknowledging your value and treating yourself with value, treating your time with value, your body with value, what the company you spend. There's this value exchange. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. It's a value exchange, and it's balanced. There's that sense of mutuality there. And when there is that sense of mutuality there, especially with people in your inner circle that you're investing time with, you can tell based on how you feel. It feels nourishing. You leave their company and you feel energized. You feel excited. They might, you leave with a deeper appreciation for that other person, because they're encouraging, they're empowering, they're inspiring. Just being in their company, it's energizing, because it's not so one-sided where it's all about them all of the time, or it's you're constantly having to try to validate them and build them up and make them okay with things, or you're not being controlled. Like, there's none of these imbalances present. It's a lot more, there's just that sense of mutuality there. So does that help? Does that make sense? I'm taking cold medicine, y'all, so I don't even know. You gotta bear with me, because I'm doing the best I can here. Yeah. Yep. Zachary says, if spending time with someone always makes you feel insignificant or less than, then they have to go. Yeah. Okay, good. Martha says that totally makes sense, and it was awesome. Good. I'm glad that makes sense. Let's see here. Scrolling up. Here's something else I wanted to bring up too about that. When we're talking about like that sense of mutuality and that validation and being around that other person, it's you leave with kind of more energy or more awareness even. This isn't to say that they're always just blowing rainbows at you. You know what I mean? Like, they're not always telling you everything that you want to hear, but somebody who's truly nourishing for you, if they do have some sort of constructive criticism or some sort of concerns, they're going to approach it in a tactful way. And it's going to come from a place of love, not from a place of tearing you down. So even those difficult to have conversations, when there are disagreements, or when they are upset, or when you're doing something that they're concerned about, like, boy, you know what? I'm a little bit concerned. I know you struggled with eating disorders in the past, and I've noticed you've, I don't know, that you've been kind of not eating much, right? Or that these are some of the things that these are my concerns, or that, I smelled alcohol on you the other day, and I know that you've been sober for 3 years, and I'm just concerned. Like these kinds of things, that a person who's truly nourishing for you is willing to have these difficult to have conversations, but it's from a place of, I love you and I want the best for you, and I'm here to help in an empowering way. Because a true friend is going to have those difficult to have conversations with you. So I want to be clear about that. It's not just all sunshine and rainbows. Let's see. Yeah, and good for you, Liz. She says, I could never and would never be friends with my ex. I've so outgrown people like him. My circle of friends and family are itty bitty now. I protect my energy now. Yeah, that's so huge when you just realize, boys, there's a lot to be said for kind of quality over quantity, and knowing yourself well enough to know what drains you and what nourishes you, and doing more of the what nourishes you thing. And I know isn't it so wild when you look back on, because I do the same thing on certain friendships that consumed in these deep dysfunctional friendships. It's like 90% of my energy, if not even like 95. It was so draining emotionally and mentally and just physically. And I mean, oh my gosh, it just consumed way too much space in my life. And it just wasn't on my radar to the thought of walking away, of ending a friendship. Like that just felt so judgmental or rude, or, I really had this idea that friendship was forever and that you just make things work. And, and you go through enough of those dynamics and you finally learn, like, this is, we only get one shot here. And there's no shortage of people out there that'll just continue to soak up as much of your energy as you're willing to give them. And they won't appreciate it at all. It'll still not be enough. They'll still feel victimized by you, no matter how much you give and you give and you give and you give. It's just never going to be enough. But yeah, once you get to that place, you're like, man, I see this level of, I feel, not only do you see it, you feel it. I think that's probably the more profound shift that happens. You become so much more in tune with yourself across the board. And you realize, my goodness, I leave here and I have a headache and I'm exhausted and I just need to go be alone, or I need a margarita, or like you got to go do something to just decompress, because from all of the craziness. I was talking to Agatha actually earlier today, and we were talking about kind of how family dynamic stuff. And I was saying to her that exact same thing, like, man, it is so wild when I'm not around stuff and I might be on the phone and I overhear certain things. And I just think, oh my gosh, it's still going strong. And even though certain behaviors have mellowed out over the years, it's nowhere near. Once you're keyed in to this and you see it for what it is, the level of tolerance for it just becomes really slim. And you're just like, man, I don't have time for it. It's so draining. There's nothing there. Let's see, let me scroll down here. Yep, Zachary says the research suggests that not only do narcissists use people, they're willing to suffer themselves just to inflict pain on someone they dislike. They are evil. Yeah, well, some of them definitely are. The ones where when you get locked into a power struggle, I should say when they lock horns with you, because, again, most normal, decent people are like, like, I didn't even, I don't even know where this is coming from. Like, I just happened to buy a different car, or I got married, or something happened. And now this person is like a raging bull and intent to destroy me. And it makes no sense when they have a nicer car and they've been married for 3 years. Like, I don't understand why they're feeling this need to destroy me. But it's this pathological need for power and control over everything. And yeah, some of them would rather just, they'd rather watch the world burn if it meant that they could be king of the ashes, even if it costs them everything. So let's see here. Julie says, I wish I'd had all this information when I was with my ex. I wasted 8 years with him. I feel so blind and stupid and lucky to have escaped. Well, I think that's the kind of the curse of hindsight is I think we always look back and it's just so clear. When you have the benefit of that emotional distance that tends to only really come with hindsight after we're out of a situation, it's so easy for us to see things clearly and to be so hard on ourselves and to be like, why, how was I in denial like this? How did I just not see this clearly? And that for sure is a big exercise in giving yourself compassion and grace. Because again, this stuff is not taught. Manipulation, how to get out of manipulation, how we tend to start manipulating ourselves, like the lies that we tell ourselves. This stuff is not taught, and it really needs to be, because even when it is taught, it can still be really difficult to get out of a situation when it's pulling out our vulnerabilities, or if it's meeting some sort of need. But yes, I can relate. I feel the exact same way. I dated a really scary guy when I was in high school. And, that was a long time ago. It was 20 something years ago. And there's still times where I'll just randomly think about him. And it almost just makes me feel lightheaded and want to cry, that I am so, it really feels like I truly dodged a bullet. I mean, he was so scary and he was so dangerous, and I just had no clue. And I talk about living in fantasy land. I just was not seeing his behavior clearly at all. I was scary, and how different things could be. Just terrified. I would probably be dead. I would be surprised if he hasn't killed somebody, frankly. Like, he was terrifying at age 18. So I can only imagine. Yes, and that's a great way to look at it, Gareth. He says, you didn't waste 8 years because you were here and growing. So something positive has come from a truly awful period of your life. Yes. And I think that's what we have to look at it like that. Like, there's so many lessons in life that I just look at it as, it's the school of hard knocks, because this stuff is, like I said, is not taught. It's not taught. And most people don't figure the stuff out until they're having to heal from it. So, it's unfortunate that, so many of us have gotten tangled up in really painful situations like that. And thank goodness that you were able to get away unscathed, or at least with your life, I should say. Because I know the emotional wounds can run deep from that. But yeah, if we can turn the painful experiences, if we can squeeze out as much, make it work for us towards our greater good in some way, shape, or form, that can be so profoundly helpful. These experiences, it can teach us a lot about what we don't want in our lives. It has a roundabout way of teaching us our value of what we will never tolerate again, of that we do matter, that, oh gosh, I mean, just so many things, what it really means to love yourself, the strength that you probably never knew you had, recovering from a relationship like this. It's, my gosh, anybody that goes through this, you're a warrior for coming out on the other side. It's profoundly difficult. So, yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Truth Seeker says, yes, the positive growth came from within us, not the narcissist. Goodness is only temporarily dimmed, but it cannot be put out. The narcissist has no empathy to understand. Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Just Me says, we have to take lessons and pass them on when we get the chance and hope that others do not have to suffer as bad. Yep. I can say at this point, hold on a second. I can say at this point in my life that all of the painful relationships and friendships that I've gone through, while I wouldn't want to repeat any of them because they were all profoundly painful, and I don't want to make light of that. Like, there's definitely a grieving process to go through of kind of time lost and all of the quality people that I feel like I did miss out on because I didn't have that level of discernment, and I got so tangled up with a lot of the wrong people for a lot of the wrong reasons. And, but all of those situations were very necessary kind of stepping stones in my own path to personal growth. And I know that I wouldn't be who I am today had they not happened. And so, again, while I wouldn't want to repeat any of that, and like Truth Seeker says, it's not about them, it's about the mindset that we can cultivate from this. If we can just become so determined that we're just going to take every single thing that comes downstream and we're going to figure out how to use it for our highest and greatest good, that's how we unlock our highest and greatest self. Because it's really easy to think, oh yes, I really want to be a compassionate person and a kind person and a giving person. It's really easy to think that these are all of the traits that we want to have. And it's even easy to be that way until life throws you a few curveballs, until you go through some major stuff. Then it's a lot more difficult to be the kind of person that you want to be deep inside and to live that. But if you can go through those hard times and not let them define you, but let them like reveal you, it opens up so much. And so you can make that commitment. You can decide, you know what, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of horrific abuse. And I'm not going to let that make me bitter and harden me and become that part of that negativity that sought to destroy me. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to be a kind, considerate, compassionate person. And I'm going to take all of these traits and this is how I'm going to express this. I'm going to express this in a healthy way with healthy boundaries around other people, in a good way. Maybe that's volunteering. Maybe that's, spending time with animals if you're not comfortable with people. Maybe it's just being a good friend to the quality people that you have in your life, but realizing that darkness out there, we don't need to let it win. Even though it can feel like it's so big and it's so massive and it's just looming there, all it takes is just that one decision of that you're going to reclaim your power and that you're not going to let that win. And that, through these little tiny actions throughout the day, of bringing goodness and light back into your life, that's how you win. That's how you come out on top. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, it takes one match in a dark room to illuminate the room. And it's these little actions of writing a friend that you haven't talked to in forever, a quality friend, writing them a note saying, hey, I just want you to know you had meant so much to me in my life. And these are some of the traits about you. And I was sitting here thinking about you and it made me smile. And mailing a letter, taking the time to mail a handwritten letter, or even holding the door open for somebody at the store, or just a smile, to a person who needs it, or just being there, taking your dog for a walk. You know what I mean? Like all these little things that's how we bring the goodness back in. Julie asks, okay, Israel Forever asks, when does the paranoia go away after leaving a narcissist or a psychopath? Well, okay, so I think it kind of depends on what all is going on. If they've made threats to you, like if they've been violent, if they've been aggressive, if there, is that fear that they could come after you, I think that's one thing. But if it's more of just kind of this generalized fear of them, then we're talking about something different. Either way, it can really help to get a plan. If you can at all move, that can help as well, just to bring it. You don't even have to move far, but if you just move to a different apartment or something like that, taking a different route to work, things like this can really help to just kind of calm down your nervous system, to where you're not so fearful that you're going to run into them. That can really help. I think a lot of it helps when you have a plan of what would you do if you run into them, if they show up at your door, if they show up at your work, if they call, what are you going to do? Kind of thinking that through. Okay, what is kind of worst case scenario here? And once you have that, then it's sort of like, okay, you know what? I can handle this. So if this is what I'm going to do, if they show up at my door, then I call the police. I don't answer. That's it. If they show up at work, I don't go to the front desk. I don't engage with them. I just call the police. If I have to see them, let's say you have children, and you're at a soccer game and, they come over and sit down next to you, you can try to act as non-reactive as possible. You can try to prepare yourself. Maybe you can bring headphones so you have kind of an excuse to do stuff on your phone. You can bring a friend with you to situations where you're concerned that you might run into them. We kind of have an exit strategy of, okay, well, I'm going to just go ahead and say that I've got to get up and go. You have things that are kind of prepared in your mind. So you're not trying to scramble in the moment to figure out how you're going to handle it. Little Miss Charmmaker says, what's your advice for dealing with the anxiety and thoughts of people and therapists not understanding you and thinking that they will label you as the crazy one? Well, I think it's kind of holding your self-worth and realizing that if they don't understand, then that's a reflection of their lack of understanding. It's not a reflection of you. Because the reality is there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to understand, including therapists. And this is the big challenge, I think, for a lot of people when they're trying to seek help, is to find somebody that truly understands how confusing it is and how fearful a person can be when they go through a relationship like this. Here's what I would say with friends and family. I would just expect that the vast majority of people out there are not going to understand. And so I would really proceed with caution with how much you open up to them, because unless they've lived it, they're not going to understand. And even if they have lived it, if they're at a certain place in their healing, odds are they've forgotten a lot of the kind of what it's like to be fresh out, and how fragile a person can be, and how raw those emotional wounds can be. So they can also be incredibly insensitive, because they're just at a different place in their healing and understanding, and they're not so fresh out. So really finding people, support groups, I think, are a great way to go about it. There's a lot of them online. I have my Facebook group. You can find my group, Thrive After Abuse. Make sure you're joining the group on Facebook and not the page. Also, my website has a forum. That's all under maintenance, by the way. My website crashed. We're in the process of rebuilding it. Hopefully in the next week, it'll be back up. But my website, you can go to thriveafterabuse.com/forum, FORUM, and join the support group there. Finding people that get it is a challenge, and it can take some doing. As far as trying to find a therapist, I would be very open with them. So when you first make the phone call, asking them or letting them know, I would use the terms emotionally abusive. Unless there was more than that, like physical abuse, I would be very specific. So I wouldn't talk about necessarily like narcissist. I would say I was in an emotionally abusive relationship, in verbally abusive, or whatever your experience was. I went through a lot, and it was so outrageous and over the top that it's very difficult for me to open up about it. And I would let them know, like, when I do start telling you about things, my concern is that you're going to think I'm crazy, or that I'm making a big deal out of nothing, or that my concern is that you're not going to believe me. And I spent the last, X number of months or years of my life being minimized and invalidated. That's my concern. If I tell you, you can also tell this can help too with friends and family, letting them know when I'm going to tell you something. Okay. And it's really difficult for me to say this. It's really, it's embarrassing as far as how this person treated me. And when I tell you this, it would really help. Please, and then like letting them know, please don't come back to me and be like, well, why did you stay? Or why would you put up with that? Or where is your dignity? Stuff like that. Like, that's not helpful. Like, what I really could use from you is I just need to tell somebody what happened, and for you to just say, to just acknowledge that that was a painful experience. So letting them know, like, this is kind of a response that I need, because most people, they don't know how to handle stuff like that. And so they either, things can become really awkward, because then they might not handle it in the way that you're needing them to handle it, especially with friends and family. And the next thing you know, you're kind of reassuring them that you're going to be okay, but really you need somebody to be the strong one for you in something like this. So kind of setting expectations can really help. And thank you, Eyes Wide Shut, for the Livestream donation. It says, thank you, Dana, for your live chats. They're totally awesome with a lot of great info. Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much. Another thing too with therapy is you can say, if you can find and I think a lot of therapists would be open to something like this, but saying, you know what, this is what I had tried before. This is what worked before. And this is what didn't work before. And I realize, I'm fresh out of this relationship. I feel like I'm really emotionally raw, and I really want to set myself up to succeed in these sessions. And so, please, if we could just kind of proceed with kid gloves, just with caution right now. And if I'd really like to have the kind of dynamic where we're on the same page and that we're on the same team. And, if there's, is it okay? Or just opening up the conversation about what you need and how you would like to work as a team. And, is it okay if there's a line that's crossed or there's a boundary that's crossed? And I would encourage you to do this, because nobody else knows where your boundaries are, and even a therapist. And so if they don't handle something how you need them to handle it, or there is a boundary that's crossed, to be able to have that relationship of, just talking about it. I had told you X, Y, and Z, and now I'm feeling kind of embarrassed and ashamed by that, and getting those emotions out in the room and seeing how they're responding to that. But before you even have that first session, I would really ask, are they familiar with emotional abuse and manipulation and the after effect, and how emotionally raw that a client is going to be? Because that is not the time for tough love with somebody, or really abrasiveness at all. That it's so important that there's that rapport that's built, and there's that sense of safety and support. Because anything else, even a quote unquote tough love or confrontation of any kind to a person who's fresh out of an abusive relationship, especially if there's not that support and that rapport that's already built, it's going to come across as just more abuse. So, these things are important. Yeah, I think learning to disengage from conversations when you realize that a person doesn't get it is one of the hardest things to do. And perhaps one of those, at least for me anyhow, it was one of the skills that took probably the most practice. And even every now and again, there's been twice in the past year, and it's been close to, 9 years or so for me since I've been out. So it's been a minute. And there's 2 times in the past year that I became incredibly reactive. And that's not how I normally am at all. And I was shocked when that resurfaced in me. Wow. So grace and compassion, for yourself is, and getting through all of this and finding the support that you need. Yeah, David is so spot on. He says, being honest about your embarrassment is extremely difficult, but it can be so liberating. Yeah. And I think that's an added challenge, especially for men. But again, and this stuff's not taught to any of us. And emotional awareness is something that I think for most people is pretty much stomped out of us by the time we hit high school, men especially. And for a guy to reach out for support, whether it's for therapy or with friends and family, I think just acknowledging that, how difficult that can be for many men. Women tend to be more comfortable reaching out to female friends and getting support, or just talking. venting about different things and our emotions and how we feel. Men really don't do that. So, if you do have a man in your life who is going through something, whether you're, obviously, whether you're a mental health professional or whether it's a family member or a friend or whatever, I think just kind of realizing, especially for us women, we often tend to forget, like, this might be the first time this guy's ever said this out loud. So what might not seem like this major disclosure could be the most profound, thing he said to this point in his life. It's amazing how much men carry. And it's sad. It's sad because that's a lot of stuff to carry by yourself. Yeah. And Jack was saying, yeah, in general, our society conflates vulnerability with weakness, much like Brene Brown has said. But yes, a lot of us men do not have strong emotional supports in our male peers. Yeah. Again, it's understanding our emotions is not something that's taught. And then being present with another person when they're needing to process their own stuff is also not taught. And so then the result of that is it can become really awkward really fast because they're like, I don't really know what to do. I mean, this person, oh my gosh, they just told me that they were just diagnosed with cancer or that they're suicidal or that, they had a loved one that died or some major stuff that they're going through a divorce. And because we're not really taught how to handle really heavy stuff like that, we tend to kind of default into trying to make that other person feel better right away, which is more about us and relieving our anxiety than it is about kind of sharing that space with them and giving them what they need. And so in turn, what do? We tend to joke about the situation. We tend to change the subject. We tend to, just kind of, I think kind of just shut down. Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. And then there's just silence. So it's definitely takes practice kind of being, sitting with another person in their pain like that. And that's very true too, Jack. I think that's an added challenge for a lot of guys out there. And he says, and more specifically is women want us to be a rock. So they fold if we get to be too much of a mess. Yeah. I tell you, man, all of us humans, man, we are just so tangled up. Like, how did we get to this place? We just made all of this stuff so much more difficult than it needs to be. And you look at little kids and in so many ways, they just have it so figured out. They're just so pure with stuff. There's not all this baggage associated with something. If they're having a bad day, they'll normally sit there and they'll tell you about it. And they don't know, to be embarrassed or to be self-conscious about certain things. And it's just, I don't know. They're just so sweet. They're so endearing when kids are at that age, when they're just so honest about what's going on with them. I wish we could keep that. I guess that's part of it, right? Like healing is getting back in tune with that part of ourselves and then learning how to express that reality kind of moderately. Oh my gosh, how horrible. Anna says, my husband's great aunt was locked in a closet by her awful mother when she was a child for being disobedient, that she was not listening. Well, it turns out she was deaf. They didn't know until her teacher said. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's just terrible. Yeah, and that's a good point. Jack says, men, I think, especially turn to humor to distract and deflect from the pain. My father does that sometimes to his detriment. Yeah, I think humor is a big one that we all tend to use, or drinking. I think a lot of people just use alcohol to kind of numb out of, oh, you're having a hard time, let's go have a drink, which leads to, 5 or 6. Yeah, just kind of, this stuff's just not talked about. It's difficult. I saw a great meme on Facebook the other day. And it said, it was a picture of like a china cabinet with like the dishes had all fallen forward. So like if you were to open up the door, all of these china, fine china would come crashing down. And the caption was something like, this picture perfectly sums up why I don't want to open up to my therapist. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so accurate. Because so many people are terrified. If I open up, then all of these dishes are going to come crashing out, and then we're going to have a big mess. So sometimes it's just safer. It can feel safer to just have those doors closed. I just thought that was so accurate. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Let's see. J Bats asks, question. Some people can never be healed or helped. How do you accept that reality when you know you can never go back, but you feel sad for their life and their future, especially if you really loved them? I think you accept it kind of moment by moment of everybody's on their own path. And yeah, it's sad. It's sad when, especially when you see, you're like, this person is their own worst enemy. And especially, when you're like, there's a lot of things about them that are just awesome, but man, the stuff that's just so self-destructive with them is just so self-destructive. You just kind of hope, like, I hope that someday they'll gain that self-awareness to get this stuff figured out. But I think it's just accepting where other people are in their life, and that, but it is wild and it is tragic. I think you just kind of we all tend to circle around that level of acceptance. It's not an event, it's a process. And I think that level of acceptance, we come to that time and time and time and time and time and time and time again. And we see it differently, and it just takes a little while to sink in, to fully sink in, and to just realize this is just where this person is. And, that's tragic. Like, there's so much more out there that they're just never going to experience. And yeah, that's tragic. But I think that's all any of us can do. Yeah, and Sunny Day says, I don't feel any remorse for the narcissist and where they all end up, not after they've done so much to me, so much evil. Yeah, I think it depends on what the person has gone through too. Because some people have gone through just malicious, wicked, intentional, horrible, hateful, hurtful things. And I definitely don't want to insinuate that forgiveness or compassion. I think that's such a personal journey, and that can feel and actually be really invalidating and damaging to even have that discussion with another person, just because they have been through so much and they have been through victimized so much. And I think sometimes when we have kind of damaging people in our lives that, we can kind of see like where that damage comes from, and we're able to it's not so horrific and malicious. It was just more of, we kind of got caught up in it, but we were able to disengage, kind of a thing. Those kind of situations, it can be a lot easier to realize that, to see this is just a deeply damaged person. And, this is incredibly tragic, and to not internalize it, to not take it so personally. Bonnie says, let's see, our job is to learn discernment and to level up our souls. The narcissist's job is to learn empathy. Yeah, our job is to learn, I would say discernment and self-protection is something that so many of us struggle with. And it's finding that self-worth again, and realizing that you matter and that you have value. And that when you value something, you protect it. Jennifer, that's a great question. Excuse me. She asks, how do you know when you're done with therapy? Well, generally, when you go into therapy, I guess every therapist has their own approach, but there's usually going to be some sort of goals that you have. So it might be short-term goals, it might be long-term goals. They might start off as very general goals at first, and then they might kind of get more narrow. And these are the goals that you can, continually redefine as you move forward in the process, as you gain insight and as your therapist gets a better feel for kind of what's going on. Because here's the thing with therapy, most of the time people will enter therapy generally for anxiety or depression. And that's very vague. And then they might even think, oh, it has to do, I'm really unhappy with my marriage or with my mother or what have you. And then that kind of tends to be like the string on the sweater. But then the issues might not be specifically that. They might be, a few steps removed. So kind of getting clear on, okay, so you might go in and be like, okay, I really want to work on my relationship with my mother. But then you might find in a few visits, okay, it's actually maybe not necessarily that. It's more of the relationship with my father that's more strained because of the relationship with my mother. I think maybe a better answer to all of this is when you're able to see some forward momentum in your life and you're able to start learning and applying new kind of a healthier way of thinking and acting in your day-to-day life. So therapy, ideally, you're going to be learning skills in there. You're going to start thinking about things in a more empowering way, interacting with other people in a more empowering way. You'll know if this is working oftentimes based on how you feel. Are you able to have more peace in your life? How are you able to handle the stresses that are coming up? If it's old wound kind of stuff, there should be some forward momentum there. So are you thinking about the past traumas differently in like a more empowering way? Have you been able to process them more effectively? These kinds of things. Hey, Randy, long time no see. So, I mean, but you can continue, with therapy, you can continue to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. But it really does help if there's some sort of kind of direction that you're going in and that you're able to see some results. Some of the things that you can do on your own after therapy, or you can even ask your therapist about this at the end of the session, is to kind of do like a little mini recap. And you could say, just kind of make it a point of maybe listing something for you that this is, everything that we talked about, this one thing in particular really resonated with me. And here's what about this particular thing resonated with me. And then maybe you could even, depending on the nature of your relationship with your therapist and kind of what their approach is, you could ask them, you could say, was there something that I mentioned that that you felt resonated or that was powerful, and that is something that we could explore deeper, or that would be worth exploring deeper, and just kind of seeing like what their take is on things. So if you have a really good rapport with them, that can be an interesting dynamic too, because it's really weird when you're having a conversation with somebody and what your takeaway, like what really your aha moment is something totally different than what they might be thinking. But there's value in both of those perspectives. So that can be a strategy, having that open communication with them. Revisiting some goals, if you have set goals early on, asking, just kind of for their feedback on things, and I guess just kind of getting clear in your own mind, what is success? What does forward momentum look like for you in this area? I think the more clarity we can have about what we're wanting our life to look like, the easier it is to know when we're getting there. I think that's one of the challenges with healing, is oftentimes we're it's so nebulous. We're like, I want to quote unquote heal from this. Like, well, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what would that really look like? If you had a magic wand and you were to wake up tomorrow healed, what would be different in your life? Would you think about things different? Would you do things different? Would there be different people in your life? Like, what would that really look like? So getting clear on that, so you have some sort of vision to kind of start steering into. So, Elizabeth says, I've been out of therapy for a year now, and I feel like going back because my feelings have changed a lot and I have new challenges. Yeah. And that, that right there shows a lot of insight. And that's what's so wild about this whole personal growth journey, is we're all very different people at different stages in our life. If there's personal growth happening, right? Like people like narcissists, there's not a lot of personal growth going on because there's not a lot of, reflection. There's not a lot of lessons learned. There's not a lot of, this kind of stuff going on. So yeah, if you realize, boy, got some of these things down pat, but now it's these other challenges that are really presenting themselves that I'm struggling with. Or maybe it's even similar challenges, but you have other skill sets that you have figured out now. Like it's just putting pieces of the puzzle together, So yeah, that can really help to just go back when you're just at a different stage in your own growth. No, that sounds completely normal and reasonable, Jennifer. She says, I started out in therapy specifically because of child abuse. It wasn't feeling anxious, and then finding out in therapy that I was abused. So I don't know if I'm going about therapy differently than most people. Well, no, yeah, no, sometimes it can be like that specific event if a person's aware of, you know what, this event or this series of events is negatively impacting my life. And I'm only aware that it's negatively impacting my life in maybe one or two or three ways. But I know that I need to really get to the bottom of this and start just working through this. And so that they might know, like, okay, I just need to really work on this issue. I'm not even sure what all is going to result from this, but I know I just need to at least start the process. And then other stuff starts coming up from that. I mean, all of these things, there's any entry point, any pain point that brings us into therapy or into whatever self-awareness or self-help or personal growth of any kind, that entry point, it's not the only one. You know what I mean? Like, that's the door that kind of catches our eye, that we're like, okay, I need to start there. But it's just going to continue to lead to more and more, which can be a little bit overwhelming, but it's can also just be a really fascinating process when you just realize, every single thing that we do is for a reason. It's really easy. It's either to avoid pain or to seek pleasure. And if we're seeking pleasure in painful ways or ways that are hurtful to us in some way, shape, or form, there's more going on there. And to start digging into that, it's just the human brain, the human experience is just so complex, just such a process. So I think I'm going to sign off here in a little bit because I'm just starting to not feel well again. But I'm surprised my voice has held out as long as it has, which is good. But let's see, let's find maybe one or two more questions, and then I'm going to go. I think that after I sign off, the chat's still going to go. So you guys obviously feel free to hang out and chat. Okay, so Jennifer, this is a good point. So she says, I set a couple goals years ago about being more assertive and being better at decision making, but I don't know if I'm progressing because she doesn't really give me specific homework. Okay, so I think if you're interested in specific homework, the next session, you could say, you know what, we set some goals a couple years ago about me being more assertive and being better at decision making. And I think I'm not really sure. I guess I could use some feedback on how you feel like I'm progressing with this. And I think it also might be helpful for me to have some more specific homework or some specific exercises that you could recommend. And if I could do that, and if we could check in on maybe like every, however you guys decide, that for 5 minutes at the beginning of every session, or you check in at, once a month, or however you want to do it. And then you kind of review your own progress. You might want to start a journal and have that journal just be dedicated to making it kind of like your success journal for assertiveness and decision making. And so maybe that's just an assignment that you could, or a challenge or an exercise that you could give yourself, is every single day to be assertive once and then to make a decision. So you're doing one of each every single day. And so you can just get, it doesn't have to be a fancy journal. It can just be a, 50-cent steno pad someplace, and you're writing down the today's date, and just make it easy on you, something that you can stick with. So number 1, assertive. Number 2, decision. And so how are you assertive today? And what decision did you make? Decision, I decided that I really wanted to have pizza for lunch. I asserted myself by telling my coworker, my boyfriend, hey, let's go have pizza for lunch. Or how do you feel about having pizza for lunch? Or, hey, I vote for having pizza for lunch, however you decide to word it. And then that's all you're putting in that journal. And so then you're able to go back and flip through and reflect, okay, this is where I was 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago. And you're starting to see some momentum. And maybe you even, after writing down those 2 examples of this is how I was assertive, this was a decision that I made today, you could maybe even, if you have the time, write down how you felt about that. So you can just kind of track your own progress with it. Let's see, Jack and Gareth are talking about goals. Yeah, goals can be, here's my take on goals. Is I think goals, because I go back and forth, because now Jack's talking about SMART goals. I think there's value in setting, the SMART, like the specific, measurable, what is it, actionable, what does the R stand for? Something targeted, specific goals. There's definite value in that. But I think there's also value in just having a general idea, like this is where I want to head. This is the path that I want to head on, and then keeping the approach somewhat flexible. So I think it depends on the person. It depends on kind of the goal or the direction that you're heading. Let's see here. Oh, thank you, Truth Seeker. That's really sweet. Let me scroll down here. Oh, thank you, Elle, for the live stream donation. She says, thanks for all you've done. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for being here and for supporting each other. And I say this all the time. It's humbling and honoring to be able to that I could say something that could make such a big difference in somebody's life. It's just it's a really cool feeling. And my goodness, I think we've all learned enough lessons the hard way that there's no sense in all of us making them. I've made a lot. Like I've learned enough lessons the hard way that I got a lot of you guys covered. So you're good. You're good. Let's see. Okay, Nikki, we'll make this the last question. Hold on, I've got to cough real quick here. Okay, Nikki says, any advice for bouncing back after the narcissist gets through my blocks? I lose days to ruminating after he makes contact. Now he's sending snail mail trying to hoover. I think a lot of it, bouncing back, is going to have to do with changing your perception of what's going on. So if you're viewing it, I think instead of like here's one way that you could kind of play around with changing the way that you see this is, instead of letting these contact attempts, viewing them as he's getting through your blocks, like it's his, I would view it as it's a troll, just a troll, like a silly, ugly, obnoxious little troll, with big funny ears and a nose, and he's just gross and slimy, and he's got on, just really visualize the most ridiculous thing that you can. He's wearing a little tiny t-shirt that's way too short, and his tummy's hanging out, and his pants are too small, and he just got one shoe on and one shoe off, and just foul, just this foul ridiculousness. And he's just trying to get your attention, and so when he does try to get through, telling yourself, so you can get some sort of mantra, like, not today, troll, or you're not stealing my peace. You're not this time, not this time. And you could even kind of make it into a game. So anytime he does try to get through, this is, of course, assuming that this is, that we're not talking like this is dangerous, right? Like, if that's the case, you need to go to the police. But if we're talking like this is just this obnoxious behavior, it's persistent, he won't let it go. You could try to link up some sort of reward that you give yourself whenever something like that happens. So he ends up contacting you. So this way, it's not this sense of dread or this sense of anger. It's, oh, the troll tried to drag me down. Right? He's just kind of scratching at your leg. He's trying to get your attention, trying to pull you down into the mud, and you didn't cave into it. So then you're going to go somehow celebrate it, whatever that might be. Maybe that's, you have a playlist of music that you play. Maybe that's taking some time to go do something fun. Maybe you call a good friend. Maybe you have one certain song that you play that, I don't know, that's some sort of like your empowerment song of that you beat the troll at his own game because you're not responding, that you're not letting him break you. So whatever that song might be. Okay, let's see. Yep, I like that. Just Me was saying, pretend that you have Teflon, that it means nothing to you, that it's the devil, that none of this crap is about you, that you're better than that. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea. I'm a big fan of visualization. I think it can really help. So, yeah, visualizing yourself, this just slides right off you. This is just, you can visualize yourself as, I think it's going to be kind of some trial and error in figuring out what helps. You'll know, I think, kind of based on how you feel about this. You can see about going to your post office too, and letting the post person know. I don't know if he's leaving in a return address or what have you. I don't know if there's a restraining order you have against him. If there's a restraining order, I would take all that mail to the police. I am not sure. So yeah, I would just make that declaration. You know what, man? You do not get to steal any more of my joy. Not today, troll. Not today. It's just crazy. That kind of stuff, that persistence is so, it can be so infuriating and so maddening, but really it's just that validation. This is how just disturbed this person is. Like, this is not sane behavior. So every time he does this, it's basically just, hey, you know what, Nikki, you did a great job. You did a great job by getting away from this guy. This guy is not for you. Here's yet another sign. This is trouble. This guy's trouble. This is obsessive, scary kind of stuff. So I guess you could view it that way. Every time you get some sort of contact from him, it's just the universe reminding you, hey, Nikki, you did a good job getting away from him. She says he lives on a boat and moves around all the time, so I can't file any reports. Reports need to be filed in the city they reside, which in his case is nowhere. It's been very difficult. As far as your address, are you renting an apartment? Do you have a house? How is he finding your address? I guess would be the first question. So, she said she's staying with her dad right now. Doesn't know how he got the address. Okay. Well, he might have just been able to Google first name, last name and do that. Is there a return address on it? And I guess, would it help if, I don't know if you're checking the mail or if it's your father or who's checking the mail, but if you could just tell your dad, you know what, Dad, just take these letters straight to the trash. Like, it just upsets me. I just don't even want to see them. These kinds of things. Tigress was saying that she's trying to make a donation, but oh yeah, I don't know how all of that works with the super chat, or frankly, even with PayPal. I'm not even sure. My PayPal address is, I think it's dana@thriveafterabuse.com. But, please don't feel like it's okay. It's donations are wonderful. It's much appreciated, but it's not, it's totally fine. The fact that you guys are here and that you're supporting each other and, all of that is I think just a great way, great way to pay it all forward. So, let's see here. Let's see. And yeah, Jack was saying about my website. Yeah, the website's been down. It's crashed. We're in the process of rebuilding it. So hopefully it'll come back even stronger. It's forcing me to do a whole kind of overhaul of my content, which I've been wanting to do for years now. So that, that's the upside to this. So it's going to be a process, but we're slowly going to be putting updated content because, it's just, I've grown and changed. I have more clarity on so many things. And yeah, it's a good thing. It's a project. So yeah, thanks, Dale. Dale says, yeah, good luck rebuilding your site, Dana. Yeah. It's, we're going to need it. It's been a challenge. So I think with all that said, I am going to sign off for tonight because I am losing my voice and I just need to go take some more medicine. That's weird. Yeah, Tiger says, I've donated before with no problem. Tonight, only a super chat comes up. I have no idea. That is, I'm not even sure what that is. I don't know. That's so strange. Uh, but your smiling face is all the donation I need. So thank you guys, for real, for real. It is. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys supporting each other, and just for everything. It's just awesome. You guys are awesome. I hope you see that. Honestly, I really hope that you guys see that. So there's just it's awesome to meet fellow travelers, I think, on this road through hell and through all this personal growth. It's really cool to come across other people who are curious and growth oriented, and just the level of self-reflection you guys have and insight. It's really cool. It's really cool. It restores my faith in humanity. I'll put it that way. Just really cool. So, okay, with all that said, you guys have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. I will be back next week. And as always, you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and just have a wonderful evening. Okay, good night.